there was a story that Adam looked up at God and said, God, why'd you make Eve so beautiful? She's so soft and she's just so beautiful. He goes, well, I wanted you to like her, Adam. And then Adam asked God, why'd you make her so stupid? And God says, because I wanted her to like you. Mitch Smiley, thank you for coming down, man.
Oh, thanks for having me.
That was a long ride from NorCal, huh?
Yeah, about 500 miles.
Man, that's a badass ride. Mitch, I've been a big fan of your site, Hard Intentions, your platform, and you've always, had this appeal of being an old school convict, not putting extras on it like some of these other guys. And we've always appreciated your content. Tell us a little bit real quick, because a lot of our audience may not be familiar with you. Tell us how you got a 38-year bid behind the wall.
I was in a bar with a couple guys drinking, and somebody came in and sat next to us, and some words were exchanged between one of the guys I was with and the guy who came in, and he was in a motorcycle club, and he hit my co-defendant in the face with a beer pitcher, knocked him down, fight went out on the street. So I started kicking and stomping the guy to get him off my co-defendant's chest, and somebody else stabbed him while I was kicking him, and he died from the stab wounds. That's the short of it.
And you were convicted with murder?
Yeah, so we all got arrested, and they offered me and the guy who was getting beaten up a manslaughter, and the other guy they offered a second degree, but it was a package deal. So if one guy didn't want to take the deal, then the other guys couldn't get the deal. So we went to jury trial, and we got convicted. Basically, my conviction was for aiding and abetting a second-degree murder by vicarious liability.
And between us, I mean, did the guy who actually stabbed this gentleman, couldn't he have stepped up and said, hey, this was all me?
He could have. I mean, he could have took the original deal.
Well, that's in the past, right?
Yeah, it's in the past, but I mean, if you're facing a life sentence and your buddies are facing just 6 years, I would have done 6 years tops. Actually, back then you did 2/3 of your time. Your good time equated to, 1/3 off. So I would have done 4 years. Yeah. But I was a fuck up, so I probably would have done a little more.
Right. But this was part of your life path, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I made a decision to live a certain way, and, I was in a motorcycle scene and, selling drugs and raising hell and fighting. And so, I mean, when this happened, that's just part of the deal, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's unfortunate, but you know what? It made you who you are. When you touched down, where'd you touch down in Folsom, or where was the first place you?
You go through the county jail, and you go to Chino, and then you go, San Quentin, and, yeah, I remember getting to San Quentin, and I was in a hole, and they used to print the San Quentin newspaper every day, or every week, and we have all the incidents that took place inside the prison, and then, events, whatever, if they had music on the lower yard or whatever, they have that. But I remember opening the paper, and there's like, I would say like 9 shots fired in North Block Yard, stabbing, but it had dude had gotten beat to death and stabbed to death in West Block in his cell, found him dead, and 4 or 5 other little articles about stabbings and shots fired in the yard, and I thought, man, where the hell am I, But that was a harsh reality wake up, reality check. Yeah.
What's the initial reaction to patch into kind of a prison gang, or? You're a big dude. Were they trying to recruit you to run with a certain group?
No, California prisons are pretty racial, so whites run with whites, and Hispanics run with their own. You know, everybody runs with their own race, but you know, I'm into the motorcycle thing, so I hung around guys that were motorcycle outlaw type guys in prison. You know, that's kind of a misnomer. People have asked me that numerous times, like, hey, did them guys try to get at you, you know, and like, if you want to join an organization that's prison-based, like a prison gang, that's what would be referred to, you have to make the effort, and, you know, with your mouth, you know. A lot of guys will go to prison and start talking about how tough they are and, you know, how much game they got, and they got connections on the street, and, you know, I'm a tough guy, and oh, that guy should be stabbed for what he just did, and then they'll put them to the test. Or guys will just start hanging around people that they want to affiliate with, and they're willing to put in the work to do that. I mean, it's something that a person has a want.
Right.
You don't get forced into nothing like that.
Right.
You know,
But
if I have to force you to join me in mine, then what, you know, you're not really with me in mine. You know, your head and your heart's really somewhere else if you're being forced into shit, you know.
Mitch, you were a young pup. You were 17 when you walked in, man.
Yeah, you know, life's a trip, man. Yeah, you sit in a prison cell for 38 years, you think about a lot of different shit, a lot of different possibilities. And, you know, when you get locked in ad seg or a shoe unit, then you're in your cell like 24 hours a day. Then your mind really opens up to, you know.
Look, Mitch, you weren't in there for singing too loud in church, but I think it's inhumane to lock a man in a cell for 24 hours.
Yeah.
We need to reform that, man.
Yeah, we do. We do. Yeah, you had guys that, you know, they locked up all the prison gang members around 86, and they just let them out. For 30 years, they were in a shoe unit and forgot the security housing unit, what people would refer to as solitary confinement. And it took federal court intervention to get them out back on the main lines. I can't imagine the shit they went through, you know. And they got down to where, like, there's no interaction with anyone else. Their exercise time was a concrete yard with no sunlight. I mean, that's, you know, it's pretty inhumane.
It's inhumane. We got to reform that, man.
Yeah, and you know, guys, there are guys in prison with mental illness, and they just pump them full of medication. And like, if you're a regular dude and you're in a prison where they have mental illness programs, you could come into contact with them guys and maybe get assaulted by one and have to defend yourself. And then, you know, prison is not the place for mentally ill people. Mentally ill, you know, like, they had guys that were dropping out of prison gangs or just turning rat and going to PC yards and then realizing they don't want to be there, and they would come back to the main line through the mental health program. So they have a triple CMS, and then they have EOP, they're different status of mentally ill programs. So the regs realize, hey, these rats or these dropouts are coming back to the main line through the mental health program. So now anyone who's involved with the mental health program comes on the yard, they stab them because they don't know, is this guy really a rat trying to come back? And, you know, I mean,
it's a mess, man.
You know, a lot of the bad things that happen in there are actually a direct result of things that staff do. You know,
you've been locked in with some of the toughest, baddest dudes ever. I mean, one guy that comes to mind is Charlie Manson. What was he like? Was he a nut job or what?
That was, yeah, after I've been down a while, they had, like, at Vacaville, they used to have programs for lifers. Because Vacaville technically is a prison hospital. So the hospital has psych programs for dudes that are crazy, whatever. And then they also have psych programs for lifers. Before you go to board, they would send you there to get evaluated and get psychotherapy or whatnot. So I was in a security housing decompression unit, they call it, actually. And that's when I started tattooing and drawing, and my cellie was a clerk in one of the nut wards, and Charlie would bring him cassette tapes, like letters that he wanted to send, like Squeaky From or any of his friends. And my cellie would type it into a letter, give him the letter, and keep the tape. And then he'd have Charlie come over to the cell and play guitar and get Charlie to sing and ask him questions, and he'd record it. He was going to make a digitally remastered, like a CD, when he got out. But so that's how I met Charlie. And then one day I was tattooing on this guy Gypsy, and I seen Charlie walk by in the hallway, and I called him, hey, come here, and I said, give me some weed. And he took his shoe off, put a pile of weed on my locker. And prior to that, he was messing with this guy in occupational therapy. It's like a hobby shop for nuts. The guy was a Hare Krishna, and he was kind of insulting the guy. The guy threw some thinner on Charlie's face and lit him on fire. So that stuff that he had on his forehead was gone. And he was on me to redo it. So I had him squat down, and I carved that swastika back into his face with my tattoo machine.
Jeez.
Don't put your bandana on, man. Get out of here, He was just a squirrely little dude who, he spent his whole life behind bars, and, he studied, Buddhism, yoga, all that kind of stuff. And, he used it to manipulate people when he got out. Hi, this is Mitch from Hard Intentions YouTube channel, and you're watching Cinemills TV. Hit that like button, subscribe, and don't forget to share.
And you mentioned that you got to see, what different eras of prison, really, and
Yeah.
there was a time where there were weights and there were programs and there was a lot of things to keep your brain maintained,
Yeah.
and you watched those slowly be taken from you. Explain how that really affected the inmate population.
Well, in the end, it gave staff not ultimate control, because inmates still slip and slide with criminal behavior inside prison. But in the end, it gave staff control, and it dehumanizes the inmates as individuals. Like they took our weights away. I was a big weightlifter. I work all day, eat dinner, go to night yard and lift weights for 2 hours, burn energy, set goals. How to off 500-pound bench press when they took the weights. I mean, that was my thing. And, they took that away. They took our family visits away from guys that had life terms. They took all the hobby shops away. They used to have decent clothes. Prison clothes were halfway decent. You could have Levi's from, a few personal clothes. They took all that away and gave us like pajama style clothes. Kind of dehumanizes you. They limit your yard, they limit your visiting. They had visiting 6 or 7 days a week depending on where you were at. Now it's 2, and you have to make an appointment to get a visit. I mean, it just slowly just took everything away from us, man. And like I said, your punishment is being inside prison. And you had staff and politicians who thought their job was to punish you while you're in there. Like, to make your life miserable was also part of your punishment. And, like the food now in prison is just so hideous. Really you can't eat it. It's that bad, and that's partly like corruption to me. When I went to prison, they have a food manager in every prison. So that food manager would get a budget. And then Tracy, the food manager, told us her budget was $2.42 a day per inmate. And so she would get donations of ribs from hog farmers, shit like that, and feed us that stuff. She would save money and she fed us really decent food. So they had they were able to buy food from whoever they wanted to with their budget. So some prisons fed pretty good. Every prison had a certain level of quality food. So now all the meat comes from prison industry out of Mule Creek, and like what we used to have spaghetti or Mexican food. It was always good, you know, it's got full, decent food. Now it's just like what would be ground beef in the past, and now it's like 40% chicken, 40% soybean, and 20% beef, and it looks like that pink slime. And as a cook, you know, I used to cook it and it would just reduce down. Half of it turns into grease, you know. It's pretty nasty.
Nasty stuff,
Really,
man.
really bad. They have a centralized menu that comes out of Sacramento now. Before, every prison had its own menu, you know. It's just it's a dehumanizing experience now, man, and there's no, it's just a bad situation.
How would you reform it, Mitch? What would you do right now? Would you put weights back in the prison system?
Why not? I mean, you know, when I could lift weights, I didn't have as bad health problems. Like, you know, I wasn't overweight. My back didn't hurt. You know, it just it keeps you healthy. It burns energy, gives you goals, gives you a place to socialize. They said they took the weights because guys were too big when they got out of prison, but I used to see guys parole, they'd be giant, you know, big strong dudes, and they'd come back in a month, they'd be skinny as a toothpick because they go to the street and shoot dope, and, you know, they come back looking like Skeletor. So if you go to the streets as a big strong dude because you're lifting weights and you maintain your strength, your weightlifting, that's not an easy thing to do. I mean, you got to have access to weights, which is usually a gym, which costs money. You have to eat. You have to have a place to sleep. So, I mean, that means you're going to have a job, and you're programming. So what are they worried about? Some dude, you got a gun. What are you worried about how big someone is?
Right.
You know, so I mean, it's a negative. And to me, all that stuff was done out of hatred, you know, and vengeance and vindictive place. You know, that's where that came from.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and I think they should reinstate weights. I mean, you know, it's a, like you said, you're probably not going to do drugs if you're in a weightlifting program.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, you can't lift weights serious and be a dope fiend. You know? But I mean, they took the hobby shops away, and people don't really know what that is. But I mean, and I was a big advocate. Like, I was always on it, the hobby, and the newer kids in prison were like, well, you know, what's your deal with a hobby? And I'm like, well, that's where we make money. And so, like, I took Milling Cabinet, and then they have a hobby shop. All the old prisons used to have hobby shops, and so they would have woodworking tools, and you would have to buy your own wood, glue, lacquer, varnish, whatever. I'd make jewelry boxes, so I had to buy my own velvet. I'd make jewelry boxes, and then they had a store out front where you could sell them. Money went to your books, keep your hobby going, send my wife a little money, you know.
Didn't you also make little Jeeps too?
Yeah, I made little toy Jeeps, fire trucks, airplanes.
Yeah, and that kept your mind
clocks.
working.
Yeah, and also because I took woodworking as a trade, it allowed me to experiment with wood and you know, be active in it. So I mean, they took that away. Guys did jewelry, ceramics, leather, art. They took all that away.
Mitch, what do you think of saying, listen, to an inmate, say a three-time felon, saying, listen, we'll wash away your sentence and we'll expunge your record if you go to the military. What are your thoughts about that?
Man, that'd be fantastic. You know, that'd be awesome. They used to do that during Vietnam. You know, when I first went to prison, I wrote Ronald Reagan, and I said I would, that's when they had the thing going on with the Contras in Nicaragua, and they had, actually Afghanistan was going on with the Russians back then. And I said I would volunteer to go and you know, to Afghanistan or anywhere that they would see fit to send me. And Ronald Reagan actually sent me a response, and I got 2 responses from 2 different colonels in the Army. And they basically said, if you don't have the discipline to live a civilian life, then you wouldn't have the discipline to live a military life. And another colonel said that, you know, people that send their kids to the military have the right to expect them not to be exposed to criminals. So I got an answer. And then when Obama was president and we were in Afghanistan, I wrote, you know, hey, guys would volunteer. No response. I got no response.
God, man.
Yeah.
But you would
it'd
be
be
with
cool.
it, yeah.
I'd be with it. You
Yeah.
know, I'm a little old for that now, and I'm free, but I would have been down for it for sure.
Yeah.
They could probably recruit several thousand people if that was an option for guys. You know. Yeah.
I know the French military, I think they still do that with the Legionnaires. They'll take a felon out and say, hey, look, you want a new lease on life? You got to go to the North African desert and put in some work over here.
Legionnaire, it's a 4-year commitment. And say all you need is a name, and if you don't have one, they'll give you a name. Then after 4 years, you're a French citizen. It's pretty cool.
That is cool, man.
Yeah.
Mitch, as you approached your date after 38 years living in a box, man, were you nervous to come into society, or were you, what was going through your mind?
You know, once I got found suitable for parole, I had to go in front of the parole board. They find you suitable for parole. You have to wait 120 days for the full board to review it in Sacramento, and then 30 days the governor has to review it. So I was more nervous about the review than I was actually going home. I was pretty well grounded. I went through it's called the long-term offender program. It was a new program created by the parole board. And I just assumed that if they're creating this program for guys going aboard, they would want you to go through the program, you know, so I did, and it was pretty good. Had 5 or 6 different groups, you know, like anger management, substance abuse, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't just do it because I was going to board. You know, as a kid, I told this friend of mine, hey, I'm going to take Millen Cabinet for the board. And he said, no, you don't take Millen Cabinet for the board. You take it for you. So that's kind of how I went into the long-term offender program. You know, I learned quite a bit. And you know, when I walked out the front door, I was pretty well grounded.
Mitch, speak on anger management. There's a lot of good men that are behind bars for life over one stupid decision, over a temper flare at a bar, similar to your story.
Right.
How would you speak into a young kid who's just got a hot temper? You know, what would you tell that kid? Like, what are some coping tools for a youngster that's got a hot temper?
I don't know, you know, I mean, it's not a one answer kind of thing. I mean, you know, I would basically say, you know, don't let anyone get under your skin, and don't make yourself angry. Bottom line is, people say, you know, that guy made me mad. Actually, you made yourself mad. You know, you got yourself mad at something someone else did or said. You know, you just got to check yourself, what you're thinking and what you're feeling about other people. Yeah, their actions might be stupid, irritating, insultive, but then you got to check yourself and say, you know, where am I going to take this? And, you know, my case happened within 2 or 3 minutes. I was on my way to prison for life. So, you know, the old expression, at the drop of a hat, you know, somebody could be dead and you could be on your way to prison for the rest of your life. Literally, in a matter of seconds.
It happened to anybody.
Yeah, you got to think, man. You have to think before you act, you know, and, you know.
No, that's good advice, Mitch.
You know, I mean, it takes a lot of, there's a lot more to it, but that's basically what I would say. You know, think about it, you know. Before you act, think, use your head.
Right. You know, tell us how important it was to have Adrienne in your life when you got out of prison, your wife.
You know, she's been a lot, you know, to me. You know, I paroled to South Central Los Angeles. You know, I lived on 54th in Vermont, and she was up in San Jose area. So, you know, to me, a lot of guys cried about living in that neighborhood, but I would walk laps around the block, you know, at 10, 11 o'clock at night with my earbuds in, talking to her. And, you know, she kind of coached me around, you know, about life out here, you know, and she keeps me focused and keeps me in check, you know, on some things. It's been you know, community support and family support are a major part of a successful parole for guys, especially guys who have done long term. You know, I mean, I knew I'm back in the world, things are different, but I'd be like, you know, I can tell you, I had some money when I got out. I wanted a motorcycle, and I was just on my phone, looking for motorcycles. And so there was a pretty new used motorcycle for sale for a very cheap price. And I kept trying to contact the people, and it's like by email only. And they sent me an email, and they said that their motorcycle was their son's. He passed away. They just wanted to get rid of it, bad memories. And it was in an eBay storage facility in North Dakota, and so on and so forth. So I got at her and I said, hey man, you know, I can't get solid contact with these people. I want this bike, you know. And she goes, it's a scam. eBay doesn't have a storage facility, you know. And so finally got a number to call, and she called it, and it was like a beep, and she goes, that's an international number. The guy had an African accent, and, you know, and she noticed the fine print. She's like, why do you want to be paid with eBay gift cards, you know? So she taught me some good lessons, you know, on things that really kind of blew my mind, you know, the scams people have over the internet, and made me a little more cautious about things I did with my phone, you know, / computer.
Well, Mitch, man, how can our audience reach out to you? Are you online or?
Oh yeah, I have hardintentions.com is my website. I have Hard Intentions YouTube channel. We've got about 300 videos, so yeah, you can watch us on YouTube. I'm on Instagram, Mitch Smiley 790.
Great.
Yeah.
Man, Mitch, thanks so much again for coming through. We really appreciate you, and hopefully you'll come back down and see us again.
Yeah, it's a nice ride. Thanks for having me.